Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here.
We're rolling. I have a list of questions, but first off, I want to find out. So people sometimes ask, like, okay, who's the guest on your podcast? So who is Ryan?
Yeah, so I work as an engineering manager at a subsidiary of Mitsubishi Corporation,
Okay.
doing sort of power related and finance related sort of work. I don't want to go too deep into the exact company because it's not like they told me I could be here today, but you know what? I'm a cowboy, you know, so we're just gonna say, screw you guys. We're just gonna go on the podcast, and maybe I'll have to apologize to HR later.
There you go.
We'll see.
Well, you know your jokes are really funny when HR wants to hear them.
Exactly. That's my point. It's like, and I tell you what, I make a lot of funny jokes, and they actually sit 2 desks behind me. So like we're in a share office right now, right?
Okay.
And so like it's us in the engineering team, and then HR sits kind of like over here, and then behind them is like the corporate admin team. And so it's like all the stiffs, and then a bunch of engineers who are just cursing about the latest bug. And it's like that. I tell you what, I don't know if you've ever read XKCD, but they have this comic where it's like the number of WTFs per line of code, and it's like a measure of how bad your code is, right? And so like it's just a picture of this door into some guy, and it just says like tester on it or something, right? And so you just hear like WTF, 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 and he's like whispering, and then just like in huge font, like WTF, you know, and it's like that's how you know he found a bad one.
Oh yeah, well like me before we started, I had an issue with a mic stand. I kept breaking it, but it's working now.
Oh yeah.
So Ryan, we're in Tokyo.
Yes, we
You're
are
working in IT in Japan. I think a lot of people want to know what it's like to work in IT. How do you get the job? Stuff like that. But I got a couple questions. But first of all, let's hit the elephant in the room, right?
Sure.
So what's going on with the eyes?
Oh man, they were totally messed up. It's I don't even know the name of the disease. Like I was born with it. It's genetic.
Okay.
And so like it's just like you probably see them like jittering back and forth.
Okay.
And for some reason, I'm the only one who does this. Like nobody else who has the same disease as me does this. But it's just like that's my eyes focusing, because if I can make them stop, and then the whole room just goes super blurry. Can't see anything. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And so I used to wear glasses, and somewhere in middle school, the optometrist was like, "Yeah, he doesn't need them anymore." So like I used to be farsighted, and that got better, but the really bad part is still there. So like just I can't drive. Never been able to drive, and never will be able to drive unless somebody figures out like a surgery or something to fix this. I think it's if you know people who have like macular degeneration, it's similar to that, but that's usually age induced, and this just isn't. And then the other thing I was told is that I have a thing called ocular albinism. And so what that means is like my eyes are albino. Which I don't know how, like everybody's eyes are white, so I don't know how you get more white eyes.
Yeah.
But they also apparently glow in the dark a little bit, which is kind of cool.
We got to test that out later.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
We're in Shinjuku, so we can go totally freak out the locals. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks, man. And the reason I'm able to ask this, we've known each other how many years now?
God, it's been 5, 6 years, something like that.
That's what I'm able to ask, and I know you're open about it, you know. So like, I wouldn't just go up to a stranger and say, "Hey, dude, what's going on with your eyes? Like,
what's wrong with you?"
Which is what happens to me all the time, you know. But anyway. So thanks for doing that. I have I'm in the Gaijin Podcast Collective, and there are a few guys with vision issues and different mobility issues, and I think they'll appreciate you being open, like what's going on. So and you have a good sense of humor, so like. It's not a big issue. So thanks, man. Your background before you came to Japan, what were you doing? And how did you get here? What was your first job?
Yeah, so to rewind a little bit, I came over in 2014 as a foreign exchange student with Tohoku University.
Okay.
And so if you know about your Japanese universities, it's one of those big ones. I mean, you didn't list it on your video, which I gotta admit I'm a little bit stiffed about, but
okay.
I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, but I talked about that was the bottom.
March. Yeah,
that's the bottom minimum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you're above those, you're considered a good marriage partner.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I was like, I didn't see Tokyo University on that list, and I assume that one's okay.
Well, like Todai, Waseda, Keio, like the big Japanese would call like Japanese Ivy League.
Yeah.
That's like the pinnacle, but the the bare minimums. You had to go one of the March
Yeah,
universities.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I went to Tohoku University as their what was it, information and intelligence systems
Okay.
for a year, and it was all right. So I did that, and I learned Japanese while I was there. Actually, that's also where I met my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so we got married. She got pregnant. We had a daughter, and then my visa ran out. So like we were living with my in-laws for 6 months, which I
Oh.
was technically not supposed to do. I was supposed to go
Mm.
back immediately, and so I did the illegal immigrant thing for a while, which
You
was
did-
which was
Must have been intense. Like
well,
if you get stopped by the cops, they ask for your passport or
well
something,
no,
right?
because my residence card was still good, right?
Oh, then you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just like technically you're supposed to, but you don't have to,
Mm.
right? And so it was funny because I remember being in the airport and I handed them my foreigner card, right? My
Yeah.
my Zaidu card, and they were like, "Oh, what?" I was like, "I'm leaving." And they're like, "Oh, you sure?" I was like, "Wait, I can stay longer." Because like it's printed on there clearly like the date I had to leave, and I was leaving the day before that. And they're
Oh.
like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "What? Am I gonna go back to the U.S. and then come back for one more day? Like that's
Yeah,
no."
yeah.
Anyway, so I go back. I do my last year of university, and I gotta say, it is hard having to feed a wife and child while you are doing the whole college thing.
Especially last year.
Oh yeah, because you take all the hardest classes, and
Yeah.
so I worked about 50 hours a week as a research assistant and teaching assistant and lab administrator. Yeah, lab administrator. That was it. And then I was also finishing up my course load. I thought I was going to do a doctorate, and then I decided that after I looked at the market, I was like, this seems like it's not really a good ROI there. So
Mm.
I went into industry, worked about a year and a half in the U.S. at a couple companies, and then my wife was annoyed at living in the U.S. We gave it the try.
Yeah. And she's Japanese. Right?
She's Japanese,
okay.
yeah. And so it was like a monthly fight. Like, there's some things that just happen every month. And
Yeah.
in our house, it was the I want to go back to Japan fight. And so
Mm.
I swear I graduated from the university I was at, Missouri S&T, which is kind of like mid-tier in the
Okay.
U.S., but they're good. They're good college for, good ROI on that.
And what was your degree in?
Computer science.
Okay.
I actually was doing electrical engineering as well, but like that just wasn't really interested in it at the time. I'd probably go back now, but it's just anyway. So I told her like after I graduated, we had moved to a little podunk town in Illinois where I was doing my first job, and she hated that too. And she was like, "Well, I wish you would have told me." I was like, "Okay, you could have had podunk town in Illinois or podunk town in Texas. Which would you have preferred?" Because you obviously don't like this one.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but the other one was a military contractor, and I don't even know if I would have got that job because you're a dirty foreigner. So,
Is that an issue when you apply for a government job?
oh, well, it
Your
depends on
spouse
the
is foreign?
yeah. Well, for the place I was going at, because they manufacture like the computer systems that go into like drones
Oh.
and things like that. They're like, yeah, you have to go through a background check, which I did, and apparently I passed, which surprised me. I didn't think I would.
Why?
Well, it's just like you accumulate enough life experience, and you're sure that the NSA has a file on everybody, right?
I've never heard it explained as life experience. In my field, they call it a criminal record.
Well, I have never been processed. Only arrested once. Never been
Arrested
processed.
for what?
I'm not going to go into it
Okay,
because
no problem.
it's the sort of thing that I'm glad
It's okay.
it wasn't me. It was somebody else who was using my computer. But
Okay.
like,
Okay.
yeah.
That's
So
cool.
it's the sort of thing
They were
that you-
buying crypto or something. Or
No, I
something.
tell you what, because it's you download Freenet one time, and so darknet stuff happens, and then somebody's like, "Hey, look, this guy's computer exists. Let me use that for nefarious purposes." And all of a sudden, 3 cop cars show up at your class, drag you out of your circuits to class, and just say, "Hey, look, you're coming with us."
Out of class.
Out of class, yeah.
That's got to be tense.
It was tense, yeah. They put me in the back of a cop car, drove me back to my dorm, and I was like, "Hey, what's this about?" And it was like, "Oh, this is about the 20 gigabytes of illegal material you have on your computer." Like, what? Oh, they must have found all of the anime I downloaded.
The anime.
Of course,
It's always
of course,
the anime.
It's always the anime, right? No. It was somebody was using my machine to do illegal things.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll leave it at that.
yeah, and so long story short, didn't even go to court because it was obviously not my fault. There's like, hey, look, next time you're using the darknet, just don't.
Yeah.
And so I haven't.
Or just don't use it on my computer.
Yeah, just don't use it on my computer. Although it had a happy ending because they did catch a lot of criminals out of that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah. So I gotta say, like, I did my part for the community,
Good.
and that didn't involve wearing an orange jumpsuit. So
That's good.
anyway, so God, I've completely
You
taken.
passed the background check
Yes,
for the
exactly.
NSA or something.
Exactly, and
One of
so
those alphabet agencies. You passed.
yeah, yeah, and so I come back and they were like, hey, look, so even if you pass, if we have questions about your wife because she's a foreign national, we won't give you the job. And so they were paying a little bit more,
Okay.
a little bit, but not much. And it was further away from my family, and so I just elected to do Illinois. But you know, like when you're married, you're supposed to run that stuff by the boss
By
before
the
you
spouse.
just
You got to get a kitchen pass, right?
Exactly, exactly. And so we lived there, and I made the promise to her. It was like a couple weeks after we moved in because she was crying about it, and I said, well, look, we will be back in Japan in 2 years. I promise you.
Okay.
Year and a half later, back in Japan.
There you go.
Because I was a consultant at the time, and so I was looking for jobs in Japan because I was aware of the promise I had made, and I also really didn't like consulting. It's not a fun industry to be in. Anyway, so this quantum computing startup was like, hey, look, we really like your resume. No idea why. And the guy's like, hey, you want to have a chat? And I was like, sure, we could talk. And so I talked to this guy, and it turns out he was the CEO of the company. And so he's like, hey, look, I really like your resume. You clearly have a lot of variable experience. You're clearly okay with just like digging in and starting. And so he's like, sure, I'll pay for you to move.
To Japan.
Yeah. And so
That's a sweet deal.
yeah, it was a sweet deal. So he paid, I think it was like, it ended up being about 2 million yen
Wow.
for me to move out here. And
So they paid for you to move.
Yeah, they
Is
did.
that normal?
It depends. Like, if you're a really skilled candidate, they might.
Okay.
And it depends on the company. This guy was just, he had a lot of money because he used to be a trader at like a big Dubai-based trading company. Until one day he was just like, actually, no, I want to do quantum computing. And so he just had like a big pile of cash. And so he was willing to pay for me to move over. And he didn't do this for anybody else because he hired like 4 other guys to be engineers at his company, and he didn't pay for any of them to move. And I was like, well, why? He's like, well, they're not clearly as experienced as you are. And so that was kind of like the big thing. Like, if you want to be over here, you really have to have something to offer. Because I know I was trying repeatedly. Like, I tried Rakuten, I tried Amazon, I tried like the big companies, you know.
Sure.
I tried Nomura, you know. Hell, I tried.
Did you try SoftBank?
Yeah, I tried them too.
Okay.
And so when I was a little bit more junior, I had maybe coming out of college, I came out with like 2 years experience because, you know, just internships, failed startups, things like that. And so like I tried these companies, but, you know, especially when you're applying over here, one of the things they do is they look at if they recognize the name of the company you've worked at, or if the company you've worked at has some sort of link to Japan, it matters. So like if I had worked at, say, SoftBank or Mitsubishi Corp or Toyota or like even like a company that has a Tokyo branch, like Dow Chemicals or something, then it would have meant something, because it's like, oh, hey, big company, you know, for some reason that matters.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I hadn't worked at any big companies because I don't get along with that environment.
I get it. I get it.
I'm pretty sure the viewers do too. It's like,
Sure.
He's been talking for 5 minutes and we're pretty sure that he's committed 3 crimes already. So yeah.
Hopefully the statute of limitations is up on all these.
Anyway, but yeah, so they moved me over, and like we were building software for the IBM Q. Right, so that was IBM's.
What's that?
It was their top of the line quantum computer. It was really like in 2019, like quantum computing was kind of like the fad, right, in the tech world. And so everybody's like, oh, quantum supremacy this, quantum supremacy that. Like, look, it's going to break all the encryption everywhere. And, you know, kind of like they're doing with AI now.
AI,
yeah.
It was like the buzzword at the time, right?
It was. And then, you know, before that it was crypto, and then after that it was crypto again. And I'm sure next year it'll be crypto for a third time. But anyway, so we couldn't make a go of it because it turns out when you have 20 qubits, like that's enough to represent about 1 million separate states in an application, which sounds like a lot, but in actuality, like that's like a computer that was made in 1980, you know? And so like I was thinking about, what would you do with a computer that was made in 1980? Accounting software, right?
Sure.
Well, you know, like that's no good. You can already do that with a regular computer.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost $9,000 an hour to run Excel, you know?
That's true.
And there were some companies that were actually making a good go of it, because there was one company that could do quantum encryption where you would send whatever you wanted to encrypt to them. Like it only worked. It was, you had to have a hardware set up like between these 2 points, because it basically encrypted it with their quantum algorithm, sent it over the fiber to their server at the other end, and decrypted it. But it did mean that you could have sort of quantum secure communications over this, like, and it was just this corridor from New York to DC, right?
Okay. And who would be using this type of encryption? Like military or banking or?
Like probably banking more than anything.
Okay.
But like I don't even know if they still exist, because and that wasn't the sort of software we were building, because a lot of this stuff is like application specific. So there's and the computer we were working with was sort of more general.
Okay.
Anyway, so there was just no market for it. And like I figured this out in July of 19. And so I told my boss, hey, look, I don't think we can build an algorithm for this that's going to be profitable for this company. And he said, yeah, okay, I agree with you. So then we built a simulator.
Okay.
So we built a program that simulates a quantum computer, because
Wow.
like if you're just trying to use one, like at the time it was $9,000 an hour. So
Okay.
if you wanted an hour of the IBM Q, you were writing basically a 5-figure check to IBM.
Ooh.
And a lot of people didn't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so the value proposition was like, oh hey, you can pay us $30 a month and you can get like a simulator that's 99.9% the same as an IBM
Okay.
Q, And so we went with that model, and I was the lead engineer on it, and I built the whole thing, essentially, because we started with 4 engineers. 2 of them couldn't cut it, and then the last guy went back to India and promptly just kind of stopped responding to emails.
Was he working remotely or he just quit?
Yeah, no, he was an interesting guy, because he went to you heard of Tufts?
Yes.
Yeah, so he went to Tufts and had a nice solid $300,000 in student loan debt.
Ooh.
And yeah, and so he was like, he came back and was like, I could do quantum computing and start my career in quantum computing, right? And he went back and like he just didn't have a good work ethic either, which like it happens. So I left that company and went to work for my first Japanese firm, and that was Alphas, and they do like cloud-based invoicing.
Okay.
So this is kind of where we get into the bit about how Japan is generally behind the trend on technology and software. To be fair, there's areas where they're really far ahead, but software just isn't it. So like if you look at the US and its cloud adoption rate, and you look at Japan's cloud adoption rate, it's like 6 years ago.
So they're 6 years behind.
Oh yeah,
Right.
basically.
Okay.
And they're starting to close that a little bit, but it really hasn't gone anywhere. And so at the time, the thing they were doing was big companies like SoftBank, NTT Data, is it like Broadband Tower, Docomo. These companies would basically say, hey, look, we'll build you cloud infrastructure and you'll pay us.
Okay.
And this model is called MSP. So,
And what does that stand for?
what was it? Shoot, I don't even remember the name anymore. It's like something sales partner.
Okay, but
Sorry, something. I don't remember.
but it's something people in the industry would be like,
Yeah.
dude, that's a dumb question. Like,
Well, it is. I tell you what'll happen is we will end the interview. I will be on the train home, and I will remember.
MSP.
Yeah,
Text
and I'm
me.
like, exactly, and I'll text you, and I'm like, this is what MSP is, and it'll be some sort of show note, I'm sure.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. So anyway, we were doing invoicing for these companies because, despite the size that NTT Data is, they can have, 200 AWS accounts that they manage for their customers. But, AWS will send you a gigabyte-sized Excel file at the end of that and say, here's your bill.
Wow.
And then you have no idea what to do with it, right? So basically the whole thing this company was doing was, taking that Excel file and converting it into a set of invoices that they could send out to their customers.
So kind of making it like human readable.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then the other thing, like they built a whole business around this. So there was a lot of like, you could have one of the things that you do in cloud is you buy like a reservation on some compute resources up front, and you say, hey, look, I need this EC2 for the next 3 years. I know I'm going to have this amount of usage, so let me just pay you like $3,000 now instead of paying you $5,000 over that period. And so AWS makes money off of this because it's sort of it's basically it's upfront, so they have it in the bank, and so but you can get money out of it too because it's a discount.
Okay.
And in one of the things these MSPs would do is they'd see the compute that their customers were using, and then they would go behind the scenes, buy these reservations, and then just keep charging their customers the same rate,
Wow.
or like maybe a little bit of a discount. So
Mm.
they'd make a solid 10% pad there,
Okay.
which to be fair, like good business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't know if I'd do it myself, but it was good business. And so like one of the big pieces of what we were doing was saying, okay, how can we best size fit these, this compute? Because like it's in AWS, you have like 100 different tiers of compute. So you have
Okay.
like, it goes in there. It's not just like the size of the CPU, it's the amount of RAM, like whether it has a GPU, all this stuff. And so, like figuring out ahead of time and forecasting what that usage is going to be over the next 3 years is a very difficult question to answer. And so there was a lot of money in that. And there still is actually. So like a lot of companies are doing this now. Like Datadog, if you've heard of them.
Okay. Just the name, yeah.
Yeah. And you've probably seen their commercials on
Yep.
YouTube too, I'm sure. Everybody does.
Well, I don't see commercials anymore now because I use YouTube Premium,
I'm still a pleb. No.
which I tell you, probably the best 10, 15 bucks I spend
I-
a month is like skip all the commercials.
I wish I'd have got in when it was 5. I miss when it was 5.
Well, those things always go up. Like Netflix just went up. Amazon Prime, probably no,
Amazon?
maybe not. They've been stable for a while, but
Yeah.
YouTube Premium will go up and Disney will go up, and it's
It's the lie they tell you, right?
well, no, it's just that they add more content, they add more services, and they got to charge more. So like it's just a part of life. So
No, I get you. It's one of those things where you start out thinking, oh, $5 is a good deal.
yeah, it's nothing.
But I don't know. I don't know if I'd pay 10, 15. I definitely wouldn't want to pay 20. So
No. But
that's-
the funny thing is, like, a lot of people thought, like, I'm going to cut the cable and stop using cable TV, so I'll
Yeah.
get like a Hulu, Netflix, and Prime subscription. And before you know it, they're costing as much as your cable bill.
exactly.
Because you got like 5 or 6 of them, and you forget.
If you ever do the addition, it's like, wait a second, the
Yeah.
cable is actually cheaper.
I'm spending $200 a month on subscriptions now. And like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It fills the void.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like a lot of at least you get what you want now instead of like 5 channels of Showtime or whatever.
yeah, well, it's a la carte now, right? So like, I don't need a news channel because I have YouTube,
Yeah.
a Rumble, and they have their different, creators. And I still use free Spotify.
Yeah.
So my podcasts are all free, right? But yeah, Prime and Netflix are, oh dude, 2 massive shows came out this week or last night. Squid Game 2,
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised about that one.
and that it doesn't start out like you expect it to start off like at full speed. It doesn't start off at full speed, but they're building, and Beast Games on Prime.
Oh, I think
So-
I've.
Dude, you got to watch Beast Games. If you have Amazon Prime,
We do actually. We do.
watch Beast Games. Holy cow, dude.
The price over here is much more reasonable for that as well.
It
Like,
is.
I know in the US you pay 100. It was 105 when I left, and it's probably like 180.
Prime?
Yeah, it was expensive.
That's crazy. Well, I got it because I wanted the free delivery,
Yeah, that was why I got it too.
and I didn't realize I got free movies and TV shows.
And music.
Yeah, and music too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm like, well, what's not to like? I get everything delivered free, and I get all these free shows. Well, it's not free. You pay for it, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing they did was they had Amazon Pantry. So if you wanted to get like, we actually did this when we were living in Illinois. We would get instead of going to the store, we would buy toilet paper on a subscription. So like every month I'd get like 2 big packs of toilet paper,
Okay.
and like it was I couldn't quite get it right because I really wanted to get like 3 every 2 months, but that wasn't an option. Anyway, so they deliver it, and then you just kind of keep it there. Excuse me. And so we did that with a lot of stuff like detergent and things. Just stuff you'll need.
There is that subscription model for like daily goods, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put your coffee, when I go to Amazon Fresh, which is part of Prime, right? Just get the groceries delivered, and it'll ask you, do you want to save 10%?
Yeah.
Like, of course I do. But then you sign up for a subscription.
And it just keeps coming. Yeah.
It just keeps coming. So if you're there, but I travel, so I might not need, that much toilet paper, or that much coffee, whatever. So I've hesitated.
Yeah. Well, and I know, and especially when you're married and you have kids, like it is just a constant drain on that sort of stuff. So you just want to like and when you don't have a car, which a lot of people in this country don't, like you just can't go to you go to the store, you go to the supermarket and you say, oh, well, I've got to get groceries for today. Oh shoot, I need toilet paper, but like your bike basket has a significant volume discount over like the smallest car. So you have to make a decision at that point. It's like, am I gonna ride holding the handlebars with one hand, or am I gonna just walk?
Yeah,
And so it's at some point you just make the decision not to buy the toilet paper and go to the convenience store, and it's like, yeah, now I'm gonna pay extra for.
You're gonna pay extra. Well, and the thing is too, if you have a big car, you're in the States, you go to Walmart for toilet paper. Good luck. Because you're going to walk out of there with $300 worth of stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true.
Some new AirPods and like, oh, the AirPods are on sale. Or, oh, yeah, I need to get a prescription filled. And
it's like,
before
the kids really need new shoes while we're here.
While we're here,
yeah. And no, the Costco, because they have Costco over here too,
Yeah.
And the Costco discount is real, but the idea that you'll save money off of that is a lie.
No.
But to get back to it, like, I worked there for until 2022, summer of 2022, and I was going to go work for a robotics company in Osaki, and they were actually making like these weird little like worm robots that go through pipes, and they use them for oil refinery maintenance, and they were actually using them. They lost one of their robots in the Fukushima reactor.
Oh no!
Because they were in the middle of like doing diagnosis on that and stuff. So they were actually they said that one of their projects was building a robot to go get the other robot.
A rescue robot,
yes,
right?
Yes.
As far as people say, the joke is always like Japan is living in the space age because you can tap your phone to pay for your train and buy drinks and stuff, but they also use fax machines. Yes. In robotics, where's Japan in relation to the rest of the world?
Yeah, it's funny because like for the most part, I'd say they're ahead of the U.S. Like you go to a family restaurant over here, and you'll have the robot server that's bringing out your plates. Which I don't like them because I actually miss the server actually putting the plate on the table, which they don't do.
Well, I miss the banter too, and you can ask like, hey, what I love to do is say, what is your best dish here?
Yeah, and it's the same thing where everything's just a tablet now.
Yep.
I find that I'm becoming more and more of a boomer the older I get.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Except the self-checkout.
Yeah. No,
I will use that because something happens in the minds of Japanese people. I've talked about this before. Sorry. Talked about it on my YouTube videos. Something happens in the mind of Japanese people where they expect, they see a foreigner, he can't possibly speak Japanese. He can't possibly know what's going on. And so the whole exchange becomes so awkward. And they'll say like, do you need a bag? And I say, iranai desu. They say, oh, nimai? No, I said iranai, which means I don't need one. And they expect me to say two, even though I'm getting a bottle of water. And then I have this ancient prepaid credit card I try to use. It doesn't have a little chip in it.
Oh, so you have to actually swipe it.
So when I try to swipe it through, they're like, no, you have to tap it. I'm like, you can't tap this card. It won't work. So they take it out of my hand. They tap it a couple of times. They're like, why doesn't it work? I said, because you have to slide it like I told you. And after all this awkward exchange, and then they think, so he speaks a little Japanese, but I have to ask him if he needs an aisupaku instead of horezai, right? Horezai is like an ice pack, right?
No.
So they say like, aisupaku tsukemasu ka? Like, no. And I always say, horezai iranai desu. And they're like, huh?
Oh, no, I've had this happen to me too.
So I go to the self-checkout. Because I got my own bag. And even if you hold it up and say, I have my own bag, they're like, you need two bags? Like, no. So the whole exchange. And also, we're talking about like somebody working at a convenience store. So they're not bringing their Harvard graduates there, right?
That's if you get a Japanese person.
Yeah.
Like you might get you're probably going to get like a Malay or an Indonesian.
A student.
Yeah. This happens actually at where I live. We got a nice boy. Well, I say boy, he's 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
He
As
works,
a kid.
Yeah, he works at the law center. I think he's like Eastern European of some variety.
Okay.
He's got that kind of like vaguely Slavic look about him anyway.
Okay.
His Japanese is better than mine though.
That's amazing.
I'm so jealous.
Well, I talked to somebody, I think a woman from Vietnam the other day, and I like to read the name tags
Yeah.
because they always have, you try to read interesting names, and I try to guess where they're from. And I couldn't guess where she's from, so I just asked. She's like, "Oh, I'm from Vietnam," and I said, "Really? What are you doing?" She's really super young, like.
Almost like she shouldn't be working.
Yeah,
so
like, are you old enough to work here? And she's like, "Oh, I'm a student. I'm going to Japanese school."
Oh,
and her
okay.
Japanese was impeccable.
Yeah, that's the thing I've found is, well, and it's one of those things where if you want to be good at Japanese, you have to be in a Japanese environment.
You have to, yeah. So that brings us to, I was going to ask about like searching for a job in Japan, but it seems like you got kind of recruited.
I did for that one. The end of the story was that robotics company I was going to work for. I ended up not taking that job because the CEO of the company I was working at, he's actually a personal friend of mine at this point. He was like, "Hey, look, I have a buddy who's starting a trading company. You should go work for him. We'll pay you more." And I said,
How do you resist that?
"Yeah, I know, right?" Because he was going to pay me. I think the salary we negotiated was like 1,800 or no 1,080 1,800 I wish I made that.
Wish, right?
Yeah.
So that senman is like, at one point that was 100 grand.
That was about. I tell you what, when I had that job, that was before the yen fell into the toilet. So that was about a solid $85,000.
Okay, so senman is 10 million yen
Yeah,
for
10 million.
for the non-Japanese speakers.
It was 10.8 million yen.
Okay.
And then there was a profit share on top of that. So yeah, it was a really good gig.
It's not bad.
Unfortunately, the CEO of this company decided that he was going to spend half the company money in FTX, and yeah, that went where you think it did.
It did.
Yeah.
A really bad direction. Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
so-
FTX. This.
Yeah, that FTX.
That FTX.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the very next year, I was out of a job because the company went bankrupt.
So what do you do? Like, and I know it's really tense because you have 2 children, you got a wife. She's probably like, "Hey, dude, what are we gonna do now?" Right? When you're looking for a job in Japan, like, what hurdles do you face? Like, what, how does that work?
Yeah, so I tell you what, there's 2 routes you can go, because in my position, because I was technically unemployed through no fault of my own, we went to Hello Work.
Okay.
The unemployment
Hello
agency.
Works, the unemployment.
And
Yeah.
when you work here, you pay into the unemployment insurance every month. You can't opt out of it. It's just the government takes your money.
It's just direct out of the paycheck.
And so what's supposed to happen is you go to Hello Work, you're like, "Hey, look, I lost my job," and then they're like, "Oh, well, we're sorry to hear that. Here's like some percentage of your salary back."
Mm-hmm.
The thing they don't tell you is that percentage is like 30%.
Yeah, it's a pittance. It's like
it's
enough.
peanuts, yeah.
It's not enough to live. So
No.
you can't have like a welfare bomb in Japan, because if you're making like 100 grand a year, and then you go to Hello Work, the unemployment agency, it's government unemployment, right?
Yeah.
You go there, and I've talked to people who are like lawyers and bankers and stuff. They're making 100 grand, 200 grand a year, and they get laid off. They know it's going to take a couple months to get a job, and they're getting like what,
Yeah.
$2,000 a month.
Exactly.
And they're like, wait.
It's like, and the funny thing is that I've paid into this at this point, I'd paid into this for, 3 or 4 years, right? So I'd paid in easily enough for them to pay me my whole salary.
Sure.
For at least a month, right? But no, I don't get that. I have to subsidize the delivery men and people like that who get 70% or 80% of what they make. And actually, that is how they cheat the system.
Oh,
so
really?
I knew a guy in Sendai who did this. He would go to work at a moving company, like
Sure.
One of those Yamato or somewhere.
Yeah.
So he'd go work there for a month and then slack off and get fired, and then go to Hello Work and get 3 months of basically the same salary for doing nothing.
Because like, yeah, if you're working at like a convenience store or delivery job, you're making about two grand a month.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And they'll just pay it.
Whoa.
And
But
so
dude, I don't know, man. Like, I couldn't live like that.
no, I couldn't either. It would it drive and the fact is that, like, okay, you're making 300,000 yen a month best. It's the best you can do. That might be the same as like an entry level position for a man here.
Yeah.
But you're not doing very well at that point. Like you're just spiting the system.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
So you went there, and
Yeah.
then you just
And-
kept looking for a job, right?
Well, actually, so I went there, and because my employer had refused to issue, or not refused, he'd been unable to, because he was just I don't want to use a bad word here, but like he was the sort of people that you see, that kind of guy. He actually did not issue me the Gensen Shoshu,
That's
the
like a W-2.
yeah, that
That's
sort
right,
of
yeah.
thing. God, I hate trying to explain that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so he
Well, it's
didn't.
just like a statement of income.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
it's like you're with tax withholding. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he didn't issue me one. So the Hello Work guys were like, "Well, where's your tax withholding?" I'm like, "Well, we don't have one because the company went bankrupt." They're like, "Well, they give us the address of the company." And the
But
problem,
they're bankrupt.
yeah, well, the funny thing is that the company had it was in the process of changing it because I was working in Shibuya actually at well, you've been there
Should be a scrambled
the
tower.
WeWork, yeah.
WeWork, yeah.
Yeah, remember we played
We
billiards
played
there
pool
once.
in. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
And so I was working there. Expensive office, by the way.
Yeah.
My desk was 150,000 yen a month,
Whoa.
which is more than I was paying in rent.
That's over 1,000 a month. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like $1,000 a month these days. Anyway, so they were moving the head office there because I was the only employee of this company working in Japan. Everybody else was in Vietnam or Indonesia or somewhere in Southeast Asia. And so, but the office was actually in Kobe, and I'd never been there, never been to this office. And it might be one of those things where they have like, they have a term for it. It's like the Nitsubo Honten, like the two tatami mat head office.
It's just like it's an address.
Yeah, it's an address, and there's nobody there. It's just so they have an address. And
A registered address, yeah.
Yeah, and companies actually do this in Tokyo a lot, where they'll have like the main office will be out in the middle of like Totori-ken or somewhere like that,
Yeah.
and they'll just have so they can say they're in Tokyo, right?
We're headquartered in Tokyo. Well,
Exactly.
that carries a lot of clout in Japan.
It does.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so this company went bankrupt. Fortunately for me, I kind of saw it coming, and so like because they missed a paycheck.
Oh.
And so they missed a paycheck. And so instead of working that next week, I was on with the recruiters. And so I just made recruiting the job, right?
Okay, yeah.
And this is the thing, like everybody says, like you should be submitting applications. That doesn't work.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. Like I've tried this route several times where you go to the company's website, you look at their requirements for the job, you fill out you do the thing that everybody says where you tailor your resume so it fits the job description,
Yeah.
right? You write your cover letter, you submit that, and nobody gets back to you. It has happened to me forever. And so I just decided, and it's even worse in Japan because you have to fill out this special form called a work history. I think it's called what is it?
Nidexsho.
Yes, Nidexsho.
Work history,
yeah.
yeah.
And so that doesn't give you any leeway. Like if you haven't been working the standard sort of 9-to-5 salaryman job, you're not getting in that way. And so what I did was I went on LinkedIn. I said, "Hey, look, lost my job." And this is like that period when everybody was doing that, right?
Yeah.
And so I had recruiters in my DMs within like 2 hours.
Of course, if they're paying attention.
Exactly. And so I was on with 5 separate recruiters that day, and then within the space of a week, I had I think 16 interviews lined up.
Nice.
And then it was to the point where I had an Excel spreadsheet of all this stuff on it
To keep track of this,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, because like I was interviewing with like 50 odd companies.
Wow.
And some of them were big names. Like I interviewed with Rakuten.
Okay.
I interviewed with Woven Planet, the Toyota subsidiary where they're doing like the smart cities and stuff. Well, Honda decided that they wanted to do something similar to that.
Okay.
And so I was interviewing with that company. I was doing Money Forward. I don't know, they're like I don't know if you use Wise or anything like that, but they're
I do, yeah.
Yeah, they're like that, but for the Japanese market. And then there were a few other companies I was doing this at, right? And a lot of the requirements of, especially when you try to get into management level, which is where I was heading. My last job, I was a principal engineer. And so the only level up from that at most companies is you either have to go into like architecture. And at that point, like there's no turning back for you. You're technical forever. I'm a bit more business savvy than that, so I tried to go management. But the thing is if you want to do management at a Japanese company, there are a lot of doors that close for you if you're not Japanese or if your Japanese isn't fluent. Okay. And I don't mean like you took the JPLT and got N1 fluent. I mean actual fluent. So basically they'll have, because and it's not like it was 20 years ago where if you weren't half, then they wouldn't even look at you. These days things are a little bit more open, so you can go to a big domestic company, one of those
Okay.
nice kids, and you can say, hey, look, I want to apply for this position, and they'll actually interview you now, which is great.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is great. But the interview is going to be in Japanese.
Okay. Now, is that because they need people, or you have a skill they don't have, or
Yes.
is it because like the declining population in Japan, or what's going on there?
No, it doesn't have to do with the population. It's more if you have a skill that's in demand. Because if you're just an accountant, nobody's going to talk to you anyway. It doesn't matter if you're Japanese or not Japanese at that point. A lot of the stuff that, and this is specifically for software engineering, because they don't have enough qualified people over here. And it's not that they couldn't, because they have very intelligent people that graduate from university like every year here. Like the universities aren't like up to American Ivy League standards, but they're about the same as what you'd get in Europe. So
Okay.
so you can get a solid education, right? So you can graduate as a software engineer with a degree in computer science, or whatever your university is calling computer science. Some of them still have like weird names for it, like information systems. I see. Or what's the other one? I tell you what, they used to call me a systems engineer. That was funny. Like I'm an
Pretty
SE.
vague.
Yeah, because it's like you're building a system. Okay, great, love it. But anyway, but the funny thing about it is that engineers, especially software engineers in Japan, have been historically just horrendously underpaid. Like when I joined, actually in 2019, when I was first over here, we were looking at hiring locals, and one of the things the recruiter told us at that time was, yeah, you can have a junior engineer in Japan. We're earning about 300,000 yen a month.
300,000. That's what they pay English teachers.
Yeah, that is.
Like entry level.
Yeah, it is. And
so where's the motivation to go? Like, and it's
Exactly.
hard. Like, I chose humanities. I did a Japanese and Asian studies dual degree because I'm not good at math. Because the engineering stuff is so hard. The hard sciences, really hard.
Oh yeah, they are. But that's the thing, is like that's what you get paid though. And to be fair, and the reason they do this is in Japan they have this. There's no specialization. Like everybody's just supposed to be an office worker.
A generalist, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, the big companies like the Mitsubishis and the Toyotas and like the Mitsui and the Mitsuis and the Sumitomos are the worst about this. Is like everybody, they have your pay bands, and it's just across the board everybody gets paid this way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, it's almost like military where you get that rank.
Yeah.
You get that paycheck.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I make the analogy like you don't go to work for a company as an engineer or sales or whatever. You go to work for that company. You become an expert at working at that company.
Exactly. And this is funny because they will just transfer you around too.
Yeah.
I knew a guy who was working as a sales rep, right? And actually, he was my old boss at my current job. Wonderful man. Cannot say enough good things about him. If he watches this podcast.
Okay.
No, in all seriousness, I do like the guy. He's great. But he used to actually work. He actually got transferred into our company by Mitsubishi as the head of IT. And to be fair, he had experience at selling software systems. So it's not like it's not like he was just like the janitor or something.
Yeah.
But it was a new thing for him. So when we would go talk about like networking or security, there was a lot of stuff that I had to explain just because he didn't know about it. And to be fair, he was very humble. So that is one of the nice things about Japanese people is a lot of them are humble.
Yeah.
So they understand when they're out of their depth, and they're just willing to just kind of ask questions and be taken for a ride,
Okay. Yeah.
But you get that kind where they get over enamored with their position, and they're like, oh, I am a bucho.
Yeah.
And
I'm a manager. I'm a section chief.
Exactly.
And they've moved from department to department, and they're just used to telling people what to do.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so and the funny thing about Japanese organizations is they do that because they want you to be well-rounded enough that when you get promoted into that rank, that you just know everything.
Yeah.
And so you can tell people what to do. So they're not used to having these sorts of specializations that acquire knowledge outside of the general line of management. But what that means though is that like your software engineer, like little Taro who graduates from Tohokudai can get 300,000 yen a month at whatever Naishike he wants to work at, or he can go down the road to Rakuten or Google and get double that. And so that's what they do. And that's where, and the funny thing about those companies is they'll transfer people over to the US if they're really good.
Oh, okay.
So then all of a sudden there's these talented engineers who are ending up in California because they're talented engineers, and like, oh, well, I really want to go to the US. Like, sure, we can do that.
Okay.
You know, and so like Japan just can't build decent software, like, because they don't have the necessary institutional knowledge because they've underpaid people. And then the other thing they do, and this is like a common problem with a lot of the really big companies, is they excel at management, but that's all they excel at. So if you've got any sort of actual work that you need to do, they'll go outsource to a third party.
Oh.
So it's like your whole company is just project managers. So
I've seen that too.
yeah. And so like I tell you what, we did this actually. We had a software for energy trading, and instead of having my team build it in house, to be fair, this is before I was hired, or I would have said, let's build this in house.
Yeah.
Which is actually, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We're rebuilding it in house. So they said, well, here, Sumitomo, go build this for us.
Okay.
And so one of the many subsidiaries of Sumitomo, who's Sumitomo Electric, who I don't know what the name of this company actually is. They just they might not even have a name. They just, like, their letterhead is just Sumitomo Electric. They went and built the software for us.
Okay.
And the funny thing about that is, it sounds, on the surface, it sounds great. Like, you get software. Great, software. We like it. The problem is nobody at our company knew how to write or read a software contract.
Oh.
So we got this software. And the funny thing was, there was no provision for maintenance, no provision for change requests.
Oh my
gosh. Like, if we needed the software to do something, if we needed a feature added in 6 months, they could just say, no, sorry, screw off. And
oh man.
And we also didn't even own the IP. So like, Sumitomo was the owner of our software. We just paid to develop it.
Oh my gosh.
And this happens all the time.
That's crazy. So I want to get to this list because we got like a half hour.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Rambling.
No, it's fine. It's free form podcast, so that's perfect. But I had some listeners who wrote in and had some questions. So we talked about hurdles faced and looking for a job, things like that. Anything you miss from back home?
If I had to say anything, I'd say the freedom. Because it sounds silly, like Japan's a nominally free country, but like, you live so close to other people that, like, I had an experience like this just the other day. We were barbecuing in my yard, and a policeman comes up my driveway. And I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm flexing on everybody by just saying I have a driveway. But yeah, so he walks on my driveway. He takes one look at my barbecue. He's like, "Oh, you're barbecuing. Well, carry on then." I was like, "Well, hold on."
Somebody called the police on you?
Yeah, somebody called the police. It was like, they're burning something in their yard.
Oh,
and in the first place, from where I come from in the U.S., if you want to have a burn pile, nobody's gonna stop you from having a burn pile. You just burn your pile, and then it's gone, right?
Okay.
Like, my grandmother used to regularly burn leaves in her yard. That's just a thing you did.
Yeah.
Not here.
Not here. Okay. Things you like about Japan?
Oh man, no, it's a wonderful country. In the first place, like, everything is clean and well ordered. I mean, this is what everybody says, right? Like, you go to the train's on time. The train's always on time, except when it's not. But, the food's good. The food is, and it's not expensive, right? So
True.
You can take your 1,000 yen, your $6, and you can go have a decent lunch.
Sure.
Which is something you cannot do in the U.S.
True. Yeah.
I hesitate to say this because my wife's probably on the podcast, but the girls are pretty. So
they are.
Like, they do.
No, they are. They are.
Yeah, they adhere to traditional standards of beauty here, and I appreciate it. And then, like, despite Tokyo being the biggest city in the world, it doesn't kind of feel like it.
It's true. Well, it's actually a bunch of towns.
Yeah, it is.
A bunch of small towns that grew together. So
yeah, but I mean, even then, like, it doesn't have that sort of big city noise and violence that you come to think of. It's just kind of, it still does feel like it's a bunch of little towns.
It's great. And so how important is Japanese language? And what's your Japanese level, and how did you say? You said you went to Tokyo University, so were your classes in Japanese?
Actually, the classes I took that were sort of in my major were in English.
Okay.
But they made you take a Japanese course. Like, they just said, well, look, on condition of you coming here, that implies that you're going to study Japanese.
Okay. Yeah. And do you speak Japanese at home or English?
Yeah, Japanese. I speak English to my kids, but that's just so they have the language exposure.
Okay.
My wife she can't She can't speak English.
She doesn't speak English.
No, she went to Aoyama University for American literature, got a degree in it, can't speak English.
Well, there are people who do degrees in English literature who don't speak English.
Yeah, no, I know. So. It's just funny because it's like she can read it. Like if I text her in English, she'll know what I'm saying, but she just can't speak it.
But you speak Japanese at home.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so your level must be pretty good then.
I'd say it's about it's probably mid in 3.
Okay.
I did a class because of my company said, hey, look, just do a Japanese class. And so I did a class and I came in at the most advanced level of that class that they had me take. Step Up Nihongo, I think it was. And I wouldn't recommend it. It's not very good. But no, I did that one. So, it's enough that I can get by. In general, you can.
Yeah, well, like when we've gone to dinner and stuff, I ever hear you order in Japanese and stuff, talk to the waiter, and like haven't seen you in a conversation like on business and stuff. But
well, actually, I tell you what, when I was looking to start a company here a couple years ago, I had to do a pitch meeting in Japanese.
Ooh,
it was
that's hard in your own language.
Yeah, well, with SoftBank no less. So I was on the phone with a guy from SoftBank, pitching him our company in Japanese.
Wow, looking for investment, right?
Yeah, we were
because SoftBank has an investment fund, right?
They do. We didn't get investment, but he said, "Oh, your Japanese is really easy to understand." Wow.
This is funny. The other day, I was at a party at Ricky's house. Ricky's a friend of mine from Twitter, and she's a producer. And I think by now, the episode that I was on, she has a web series called The Production.
Okay.
And I'll send you a link because it's hysterical. You'll love this. It's kind of like The Office, and they didn't have anything like The Office in Japan. And so she made one in Japanese.
She sounds really good.
And she's from Chicago. I mean, like born in Europe, grew up in Chicago, and did a series kind of like The Office. And it's written in Japanese by her. So she's brilliant and funny. And I was in an episode, and I'll try to get a link in the description if it's out yet. But there was a end of the year party, Bonenkai. Right?
Yeah.
End of the year party at her place. I went up there, and there were some people from the neighborhood, some people from the industry, meaning, TV and film. And I was talking about different parts of Tokyo, because I've been here total 20 years, and I was talking about different things in Japan and stuff like that. And this guy looked over at me, and probably one of the best compliments I've ever got on my Japanese, he looked at me and he said, "You're kind of weird." Meaning, because we were talking about certain areas of Tokyo, and I know them intimately because either it's where I live or I go all the time. I was talking about a certain bridge or a certain street, and he's like, "You're weird." And I took it as a huge compliment. Yeah. Because a foreigner shouldn't have that much intimate knowledge about Japan. They don't expect that.
Well, it is like one of those things where especially if you're in the 23 wards area of Tokyo, the expectation is that you don't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
But
there's so many embassy workers and foreigners who come over for a year or two.
Oh yeah, especially if you get around like Akasaka or Roppongi, you're just it's all foreigners. Yep. They don't speak any Japanese. Like you might as well just speak English at that point.
Yeah, well, exactly. And some of the stores, like Nishin, has a couple foreigners working there at the cash register.
Yep.
Because they have so much of their clientele is temporary. Like I think embassy workers come here for a couple years.
Yeah.
Right? And they rotate in and out. A lot of big companies, they bring over top level management who live in Roppongi Hills,
Yeah.
And they'll walk over to Roppongi Hills office tower and work at, like Barclays or one of these huge companies. And they're managing Japan, but they're only going to be here a couple of years. They're not going to learn any great level of Japanese,
And actually, the CEO of my current company is that kind of guy.
Okay.
So he's over from Ireland he came in on last September, and he's going to be here maybe for a couple more years, and then he'll go back as well. But yeah, no, they don't even bother. They don't bother, and I don't blame them, because it's like it is for English speakers. It is the hardest language.
It's really hard. I would say maybe Chinese. Or Vietnamese, but Japanese is so tricky.
Well, according to the State Department, they're like because I don't know why I got looking on this, but yeah, they were saying hardest language for anybody who speaks English is Japanese, followed by Chinese.
Yeah.
And I don't blame anybody for saying Chinese is harder because
it's hard.
I can't speak it.
Well, like I've studied. No, no. I watched a couple shows about on Netflix, Korean shows, and they're fantastic. The stories are amazing. Some of them are like created by a Korean production company. Some of them are created by Netflix. And I've studied Hangul, the written language.
Yeah.
I could never wrap my head around it. But you hear certain things in a show, like a 10-part series, you hear the certain things over and over again.
And
you start to recognize them. So for a Japanese speaker, Korean's not that hard.
No.
But
And for Koreans, it's the same.
yeah. So, I mean, so many really high-level Japanese speakers come from Korea.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And it's because like the hiragana and katakana have a similar sort of system to Hangul.
To Hangul, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it is easier for them to learn.
There's a lot of words too. Like I heard the word yaksoku, meaning promise. I heard that in a Korean TV show. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, you just said yaksoku.
It is. It's weird because I've watched a few myself, and it is amazing how many of those words. Like, wait a second, this has the same meaning.
Yeah.
What's this about? Well, and but even when you get away from English, even when you're still in like the Romance language genre, like I one of my engineers is Spanish, and like he's like it's really easy for Japanese people to learn Spanish because the syllables are very similar.
Yes.
So whereas
vowel consonant, and then the vowels are pretty similar.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And some of the words are even the same, like casa.
Ah.
I've made jokes about this, by the way.
Mikasa?
Yeah.
But casa in Japanese is
Umbrella.
umbrella.
Right,
but casa in Spanish is house, right?
Yeah, that's why. Well, that's why when Spanish people come over and they go to the convenience store, they get free umbrellas. Me casa es su casa.
Oh.
Oh,
Awesome.
That joke flies.
That's great. I love dad jokes too. So, what about life in Japan as far as friends?
Yeah, that's interesting because I have a few Japanese friends, but a lot of it is like you just have to kind of be here long enough that you soak into the place, you know? Because like if you just come over and well, if you're in college, it can be different because you go to university, you're around the same people every day, so you can kind of get in with a group that way.
You can become friends. Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're university students, they're more willing to look for friends who are foreign.
Well, they haven't filled that slot yet.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
People my age, like, well, I've got my best friend from high school, my best friend from the neighborhood. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But like as soon as you've got a job and you're going to work, like people just don't have time to just go out and spontaneously try to make new friends. So a lot of that is just people from work. And so if you don't speak Japanese, chances are you don't work for a Japanese company. You work for one of the startups, or you work for like a gaishike, a foreign company. And then so like the people you hang out with are probably going to be foreigners.
Yeah.
And then, but for me, it's a little bit easier because like my wife's Japanese. I live in a neighborhood that is far away from central Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say where that is because this is the internet.
Yeah.
But although I do know somebody else named Ryan in the same neighborhood, it's hilarious.
Well, maybe they'll find him.
Yeah, maybe they'll find him.
No, don't find him.
No. Yeah. But anyway, so I live far away from central Tokyo. So my neighbors are Japanese, the vast majority of them, and the kids my kids go to school with are Japanese, the vast majority of them. There are foreigners. They're just very rare.
Okay.
And so, like, you get a friend group who are Japanese. And if you speak Japanese, it's even easier because it's like you'll be walking to the station and you'll see old lady Tanaka who runs the bakery or whatever, and you'll say, "Oh, Tanaka-san, please, I'd like a sweet roll," and she'll say, "Oh, we see you all the time. How long are you here?" And that's how you build it up.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in a year. It takes forever.
And there's a perception. We talked about foreigners coming in and out of Japan. There's a perception that you're just going to leave.
Yes, it is there.
But once they find out, like, you have a family, you bought a house, right? Like, oh, maybe he's going to stay, right?
Yeah.
So, because I think, like, if I were living in LA and somebody from Europe came over, even though they're fun to hang out with, I wouldn't want to become best friends if they're like, oh, I'm here to make a movie and then I'm leaving after the movie, right?
Yeah, I know people like that. I mean, we both know people like that.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you chat with them sometimes, but like there is a certain amount of proximity that's required to maintain a relationship. But like it's like and the longer you live in an area, the more sort of part of the scenery you become.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people don't like that because some people have, well, a lot of people, especially from the US, have main character syndrome where they're like, oh, I have to be the center of attention all the time. But in Japan, you really like that is when you start to be part of the community, is
Yeah.
when people get used to you being there.
Yeah.
And they start to know your name, and it's like,
Yeah.
and like the kids come by on the way home from school, and it's like, oh look, it's Ryan-san on the way home from work, like, hi, you know, like as soon as you hit that point, you know,
Yeah.
like you're basically like, yes.
Yeah. And you know what? It's just had a conversation about this on Twitter Spaces last night. As a foreigner, we kind of expect to be the outsider, but you know what? If a Japanese person were to move from one town in Japan to Tokyo,
It would be the same.
it's going to be the same because people take time to warm up to new people. It's just so it's not because you're a foreigner, you know, it's because you're new to the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, well, and again, the other thing is like if you're so blatantly a foreigner like you and I are, then it's even easier
We
because
stick out, yeah.
yeah, because like if a Chinese person moves over here, some Japanese person might make the mistake of thinking they're another Japanese just from a different place,
Sure.
and so it's easier for those people to fit in
Yeah.
the beginning, but like if you do the work, then the Japanese are willing to accept you.
Yeah.
You know, after a while, you'll never get there all the way.
Mhm.
Like you'll never be Japanese.
No, never. Yeah.
It-
Don't
I-
even try.
The people who go on like Instagram and say, "Oh yeah, I'm Japanese," just because they have the passport, they annoy the hell out of me because they're clearly making it look easy and it's not.
No. Well, you know what I always say? Okay, you got Japanese nationality. Okay, you're Japanese. Okay, you're Japanese.
Well, 'cause
Fine.
it- well, no,
What
'cause-
what doesn't make any difference to me. Right.
I don't care about that, but because they'll say like they'll call themselves Nihonjin, right? Like we are
No,
Japanese.
You're not Nihonjin.
Whereas I would say Nihon kokuseki, like you have Japanese citizenship.
Citizenship. Yeah.
So
and it's funny because in the States, like anybody can move to the States,
and be American, yeah.
be American. You can call yourself American. Don't even have to speak good English. Could have an accent from the old world. But people will accept you if you say you're American.
And if you have
they'll
enough guns.
If you have the values
Yeah.
of Americans, like family and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you care about the country, you're involved, you're contributing to society, people will say, "Oh, he's American."
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
And you know, because America is a propositional country,
Yeah.
not a country based on like
Ethnicity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Whereas Japanese is an ethnicity, and also there's so many levels too, because if you spend too much time overseas,
you're still not Japanese.
you're not
though.
Japanese
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
like who is that tennis player? Naomi, what's her name?
Yeah. No, but wasn't she half Japanese?
She was half.
Yeah.
And she was from Osaka, and she came back. I forget when, but her Japanese is horrible, and so
Ah.
I think I remember her getting mad on Twitter about like how people were treating her because they weren't treating her like Japanese. I'm like, well, you haven't put in the effort yet, you know. Like it's like with anything else, like being part of a culture requires a certain amount of effort on the part of the individual who's trying to be part of that culture.
Yeah.
Like you can't just fall into it.
Yeah.
It requires effort every day.
Yeah, it
So-
really does. And
Yeah.
so really quick, we got like 10 minutes, and I'm going to open a can of worms.
Oh yeah. Open it
AI.
up.
AI. What role does it play in your day-to-day business? Is AI taking jobs? Is AI making jobs?
You know, it's funny because, especially in my line of work, it's very much the thing to say is, you know, AI is not going to hurt you and it's not going to take your jobs, and you know, like, but it's going to do everything. You know, like it's funny because they want to have both ends. I think AI is definitely going to take some jobs. Like it's already taken jobs in sort of my area. Like we used to have this thing called a technical writer.
Okay,
Where you'd go and you'd do your engineering work, and then you'd hand it off to somebody, and that person would write your manual, right?
Yeah.
You know, like
the user manual, the maintenance manual,
exactly. Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
And so now, because we have generative AI, that's my job.
Oh, really?
yeah.
So can you take, like, let's say we're building a PC. Can I take the specs, put it into ChatGPT, and say write a manual?
Not the specs, but but one thing I've done a couple of times, and it actually works pretty well, is you could take like a whole file of code and just kind of paste it in there and say, all right, now write me some docs for this, and it'll do it, and it does it pretty well. And then the other thing we've done actually is there's this product called GitHub Copilot,
Okay.
and that can actually look at what you're writing and do autocomplete for you.
Oh,
So you could be writing
in code?
in code, yeah. So,
Oh, dude.
so you could be writing some code, and because a lot of it is really repetitive stuff. Like you've got the same pattern over and over again, and so like what a lot of coders will do, like you've got a lot of macros that you run where you copy
Yeah.
paste stuff. No, Copilot just does it, and
Wow.
and like you can even give it like comments and say, hey, look, I've got a database. It's got this schema.
Hmm.
Generate me an API, and it'll do it.
Wow.
And I mean, to be fair, and that sounds really amazing. And like, oh, hey, I don't need a junior engineer anymore because I've got this tool. But it doesn't replace the junior engineer. The thing that it does is it makes the junior engineer a lot more powerful and a lot more dangerous at the same time.
Oh.
Because like the funny thing is like as somebody who has a lot of experience in this space, I can see when the AI is leading me down a blind alley. It's
Oh.
generating anti-patterns, it's pushing me into something that's not going to be easily maintainable, that sort of thing. To be fair, some of the later versions of OpenAI's framework, like O1 or O3, for example, they're really good, but those cost $200 a problem. So,
Oh,
so
wow.
you're not paying for that
Okay.
yet. But yeah, so no, like we would still hire junior engineers even with all the AI we have.
Okay.
But that's just because like at some point you need somebody to be able to take the business requirements and interpret them down to a level that the AI can work with to translate that into code. So it's like the same thing that we did 40 years ago when we moved from typing in assembler to high-level languages.
Yeah.
Now we've just got a higher-level language. So, but it still doesn't get you all the way there. So you still have to go back down into the high-level language and say, well, look, it made a mistake here. Let me fix this. It doesn't get you out of the work of actually doing it. It just makes it a lot less repetitive, and so you have more time to think at a higher level.
See what I think, and I'm not an AI expert or engineer or anything, but seems like if there's something repetitive that I can automate,
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'd love to. Like for editing videos, I have to add, voice isolation, compressor, limiter, volume control. And instead of doing all those one by one, I can create a preset
yeah.
and then click and add the preset to the audio. So instead of 10 steps, it's now one step.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically what the AI does. Some people are scared because they see the strides they're making and they think, oh, well, it's only one step away from just taking my job entirely. But I don't know. I don't see that coming because like we're hitting diminishing returns on all this stuff. Like we thought we were at the end. And in fact, I was saying this regularly to my colleagues until just a couple of weeks ago when O3 came out and OpenAPI kind of turned things upside down again, is that, they're probably not going to make a whole lot better. And to be fair, O3 it can solve the same sort of problems that I would expect an engineer to solve. But it also costs $200 for every problem, for every prompt. So you're not replacing an engineer with that.
Okay. Good.
If
Good to know.
Yeah, like, even if they got it down to where it cost like $1, like if I could just put in $1 and get out an API, like that's not at the level where I would just use that tool instead of hiring an engineer. That would just mean my engineers would now be much better at their jobs, And so like because the thing that people don't understand and underestimate is like they just assume that my backlog is finite, and so eventually I just run out of work. No, that's like I have in the next year, my team has to get done basically 15 months worth of work
In 12 months.
In 12 months, yeah. And that's with the 2 guys I got permission to hire that I haven't hired yet. So like it's gonna be really funny when they come on. It's like, all right, now here's your work for the year. Wait, this is like an extra 3 months. No, you got to do it. You got AI. Go do it. And so like and that backlog just grows. So, and that doesn't even get into the idea that like a lot of the software, especially as it grows, it just becomes a tangled mess of spaghetti. And like if AI can help to make this stuff last a bit longer, that can only help.
Okay.
So, I mean, I am very much on the sort of optimistic end. I don't really believe in AGI because I think if I'm getting into the metaphysics of it, I think that the soul does exist. And so like even if they were able to perfectly just simulate a human brain, like they're starting to do that with what is it, flies now. And even if they did that with a human brain, I don't think they would get a person out of it. And the other thing is, like, if even if they did, that thing would just call itself an engineer and demand a salary. So
Yeah.
so like it's just you're not getting away from it. And the funny thing about it is, because everything is sort of in meat space, even if an AI could do code 2,000 times faster than me, if it demands a salary, it's gonna know what its market value is and demand 2,000 my salary. You know, like, it's just, and so, like, maybe the Microsoft engineering team is just 5 AIs now, which, I mean, they can't do worse than Microsoft's actual team, but you know, okay, then, but at the very least, like, the idea that, like, the idea that automation is just going to kill your jobs, it's an old trope, and it's I know it's never going to die, but I just kind of wish it would, because okay, so Microsoft does replace all their engineers with AI. That just means we have all those engineers to do something else.
There are going to be other jobs.
Yeah.
And people are creative. Humans are creative.
They are.
So they're going to come up with other solutions. They're going to, you know what? Now I can write a course on how to write prompts for ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, or the other thing you could do is, like, the nice thing about it is it enables an engineer who has a lot of experience in one domain to learn about a different domain. So one of the things I did a couple years ago when ChatGPT first came out is I used it to learn Pascal. Like, in the space of a day, I just learned Pascal in a day. And because I had to write an installer for some program, and it was like the only thing that would do it was Pascal. I didn't know Pascal. I learned Pascal. Great, now I know Pascal. I'll never use it again, but it's there.
You never know.
So, like, that's the thing, is just it enables you to X factor your own skill set. That's what I'll say. And
I use ChatGPT and I use Grok.
I
love Grok. When writing a script for something, like, I'll be like, I went to Shin Okubo yesterday. I'm like, well, what's interesting about this neighborhood? Because it's Koreatown of Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting about this neighborhood? And I could have gone to 10 different blogs, but Grok goes and checks all these blogs and tweets and condenses it to, and I say, give me 10 interesting things about this area. And it'll take a second and it'll start populating the screen. You're like, oh, I didn't know. Like, I've been in Japan 20 years. I didn't even know this.
Yeah, but the thing it doesn't do is it doesn't do your job, because all it's given you is, like, the point of entry, right? So you've still got to go and do all the actual research. You just have the 10 bullet points you needed to get started.
Yeah, and so it'll say, like, okay, this place is famous, or this street is famous, but it'll say the street's famous, but it doesn't say why.
Exactly.
So then I got to look it up.
Exactly.
And then I got to go film it and say, okay, this is what it actually looks like. And then, so I think it's just a little turbocharger for your creative work, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's not going to take over. Like, you still have to have the engine, the human, but you can add a supercharger to that engine, and it just does more. So,
and, you know, and the other thing it does is it kind of helps you, like, if you've got a because one of the things that they never teach you in school, but is the most useful skill for anybody who was born or had to work in the period between 2000 and 2020, is knowing how to use Google. You know, the Google foo. And like, it's funny because, like, that is one of the things that sort of separates a lead engineer from a non-lead engineer is how good their Google foo is.
Really?
Oh yeah, because it's like, you get, well, you know, and it's just like, how many times have you seen this error before? If you've seen it a couple of times, you might remember it. If not, you just have to know where to look. And the knowing where to look bit, that's what you pay for.
Being able to search is a real skill.
Oh yeah, it is.
Because there's so much crap on the internet, you need to be able to filter and refine the search too.
Exactly. And so what AI does, especially the new ones, is it lets you just cut out 80% of the chaff and leave you with 20% that you can actually kind of sift through. Now, to be fair, there's still a load of crap in there. Yeah. And so that's where experience helps. And so, like, it's not replacing the junior engineer. It's not replacing, like, the writer. And honestly, like, the thing about the more creative side of any industry, anything really, is that, like, it's your ability to tap into what it means to be human and express that. And AI is fundamentally incapable of doing that.
AI doesn't have that. And then if your end user is a human, you need to look at it from their perspective. Like, what does my customer want?
Yeah.
AI doesn't have that experience right? So,
No, it doesn't.
And you know what? We're running out of time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, it's perfect, man. I really enjoyed this. I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, no, it's
But
been a pleasure.
Thanks a million, man.
Yeah, no, I really liked it.
We'll have to do it again.
Definitely.